the day of, you go into labor, you get to the hospital, and the couple days in the hospital, I think it's really important to plan for that you actually have a plan and then a backup plan, and that exactly. You try to think as much as you can about how you think you're going to feel, who you want there in the delivery, who you want to come visit you, for how long they want you to visit. You want them to visit, how to kick them out when you want them to leave, how much time you're going to spend with the baby, all of these kind of things. How did you plan? What did the hospital look like for you?
At the time, the hospital that I was going to just added a new women's ward, as they called it. Right. And so I had seen the birthing rooms and that. And so I kind of knew where I was going, but it was mainly my doctor that I sat down with and said, I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, I don't know what to expect. No one's giving me any information. I didn't have any family to say, well, you better be prepared for hours of labor and pain. So I was clueless. And so my physician was phenomenal. He was awesome. Very much took his time out of his everyday normal routine and would sit with me and say, okay, here's what you're going to expect. Here's what we can do. Here's what legally you can and cannot do. And so the plan was I could stay as long as I wanted to in the room with the baby until I felt like I was ready to let her go. Sure. And at that point, there was no place for relinquishment. There wasn't a place that you met. Right. So after I gave birth, I did have to have... He made it very strict with the few nurses that he let part of it, because amazingly enough, there was a lot of nurses who were uncomfortable with adoption, and they weren't very caring. And so he made sure, thank heavens, he made sure he knew who they were. He made sure they were there and that I had all my needs met. And I did have to have a few people leave. Yeah. And when I invited the parents to the hospital, both of them one of them had their grandparents visiting from a different country, so I was able to meet them, and that's cool. We all sat in the room with my parents and kind of just enjoyed and talked about, how beautiful she was and how I was doing, and it was the most awkward feeling, but it was the most calming feeling. And I don't know how to explain that as a birth mother, other than it's kind of an out-of-body experience. The outside of you is screaming, and the inside of you is going, I got it, I'm good, I can do this. And so it was very much... It would
have been the opposite for me. Like, my inside would be screaming, and I'd be like, everything's fine.
It was. I remember handing my daughter over to her grandmother that was visiting, and everybody was just crying, and I couldn't let myself cry. But it felt like it was an out-of-body experience, and the outside person's just screaming and swearing and cussing and wanting everybody to get out of the room. And my physician was so phenomenal. He stayed in the room the entire time. He made sure everybody was on their best behavior, let's put it that way. So I was calm and comfortable, and then
it's really important to have an advocate in the hospital.
Oh, your physician.
Somebody that can be, whether it's your physician, whether it's your mom, whether it's your dad, whether it's your caseworker, whatever it is, it's really important to have somebody that can be the enforcer.
I'm thinking about, he was my biggest advocate as far as my supporting group, because at the time you couldn't just leave the child at the hospital and then the parents came picked him up. So I actually had to give guardianship to him.
Oh, really?
And then he had guardianship for however many hours until I had gone to court later that day, and then they could go pick up the baby. So it was heartening for me to have to sign these papers to him. So it felt really awkward. So it was a huge amount of level of trust and respect for him, let alone knowing everything would be taken care of once I had left, that the parents would be taking care of the daughter. So there was this added stress of going basically, what the hell am I doing? You know, and that emotional roller coaster, and try to keep my calm and to keep my position. And I ended up spending 2 days, and I think I talked to her more than I know she'll never remember it, but in my mind, it was my way of, okay, I got to say these things. I got to talk to her. I got to love her. I need to feed her. And I couldn't put her down for 2 days. And then finally I said, okay, I'm ready. Even though I really wasn't ready. I was.
You're never ready.
You're never ready. But I finally did do it. So for me, that was my only advocate, was my doctor and my physician. And it took a lot for me to have to, thank heavens you took the time.
Yeah.
In between my appointments, I would sit in the room and he'd check me and I'd be in tears and ask him 150 questions. And he was so kind. I felt bad for the other patients if he had any after me.
Jenna, what was your hospital experience like? How did you plan it? Did the plan ever change? I mean, those kind of things.
Well, as far as I think the thing I most planned was just delivery. Because the birth father was still involved, I wanted him there. My mom didn't want him there, but I wanted him there, so I didn't want my parents there. So it was just he and I. But as far as visitors, all of my family came, and his family came. But then I had a couple friends that showed up, and it was like, what are they doing? I mean, they had the best of intentions, but it was just not what I needed. And as soon as the first one came, I looked at the current boyfriend, and I was like, I can't have anybody else here. Like, it was already enough. I mean, I have 7 siblings in my family, so it was like, it's already a full, time slot for all these people to come see him and hold him, and I need as much time with this baby as I can get. And I had him for 3 days. So my doctor was really good too. When he found out that I was placing, he was super supportive and just great. And he came and he's like, oh, he's so cute. Are you still, are you still feeling okay with your decision to place, and all these things. And it was a positive experience, but I think definitely you need to have somebody there, because I'm such a people pleaser. I couldn't say no to anybody coming. And so you've got to have somebody there because you're not in the right mind. I mean, you're not in the right mindset anyways, because you're about to take away a piece of your heart. But to have somebody there to say, this is not okay, or this is okay. And I tell girls now, I said, write it all down. Write who you want there, who you don't want there, how long people can stay. If you don't feel comfortable telling people to leave, have like a little wink or a code word or something that you can say to somebody there who can stay with you, to let them know that it's time to go.
What do you think, Charity, is the job of the caseworker during this whole planning process, and then actually in the hospital?
I really love what you said. You have to have a plan, and I really like to start building the plan even a month if we can before delivery, because it takes some time to think about some of this kind of stuff. Who are you going to want there? And I one of the keys to do is have it really detailed, realizing it is going to change 3 times, and that's okay too. We're going to have C-sections, we're going to have NICU sometimes. Unfortunately, I've had babies life flighted to other hospitals, and that changes everything. Realizing that, however, if we can get some of the things, if we can talk about some of those things ahead of time, then it's not as hard. So a few of the things that I like to go over, like you talked about, you're going to go through who's going to be in the room, how long they should stay there, when do you want the couple to show up, where are they supposed to be?
Because they can now.
They can now.
If I could have had my couple there, oh my gosh, that would have been so great.
And they can be in the labor and delivery room with you, or are they waiting outside the lobby, or are they still home,
Or are they never invited at all, and that's totally fine.
And that's okay. Exactly. And the couples are okay with that too. It has to be with what you're comfortable with. But if you have a plan, they know where to be, and they're not going to get in your way if you don't want them there.
Exactly.
Having a plan with going, okay, so I'm planning to be in the hospital, this is what my insurance covers. I think it's really good to know ahead of time how long you are going to be allowed in the hospital, realizing the hospital counts from when you go in under labor. You're having labor, you're going to go in the hospital, they're going to start counting that time on your insurance. So figure out with the insurance. I think it's good to anticipate what they're going to do to the baby and who's going to cut the umbilical cord. Is it going to be a family member? Is it going to be the doctor? Who's going to that? It's pretty important. Can you take pictures there? Can you videotape in their room? I mean, all these things are kind of little, but they add up.
big.
I really think. Another thing I think throws off most of the girls I work with, and that is by state law here, the social worker has to come in and question you about your decision to place. And sometimes the girls think, well, then they're questioning me as a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I made my choice, but they really have to make sure that you are not being coerced into any of this. So we go through, and I like to have that planned out, including relinquishment. Where is it going to be? How soon do you want to relinquish? Of course, different states you're going to have to do it different places, but if they know about it, then like you didn't have a chance, you didn't know what it was going to be like, you know, and what to anticipate. I can help girls. I can tell them exactly what it's going to be like. And in fact, we read
What
over
it says,
all the
yeah.
documents in my office a month ahead of time, so that it's not when we're emotional, it's when we're thinking about things, you know, and processing it. And then again, up until placement. Placement is your choice. It has
Yeah.
to look like what you want it to look like. So, after we get through all the planning, realizing that sometimes things change, my job really when the girls go into labor is I am there on the sidelines being a cheerleader and ready to jump in when I'm needed and when I want it, which is why I like to have a plan, because then I know, do they want me there some of the time, any of the time? I'm going to come up and visit. When would you like me to visit? Do you want me to stay 2 minutes? Do you want me to stay an hour? What do you need from me? You know, because again, it's your time with the baby. And then so I tend to be one that stays a little bit on the sidelines, realizing this is an important time for you, but I'm there to support and help and work through the rest of the process.
I think cell phones are great now because
So nice.
you know, just text. That's why I say just text me and tell me what you need when you need it, and I'm gonna make sure.
24
it's
years
taken
ago,
care of.
what?
Yeah.
Oh, what?
You can do it so quick, you know. So are you doing okay? What do you need? Like I said, and it can just be like that, and it's not intrusive, you know. I kind of call myself the Grim Reaper sometimes. Everybody knows when I come in what I'm there to do, you know.
Yeah.
If you want to place, and so my presence there is not always the happiest of things, and yet I realize that, and that's okay too, you know. Like I said, we're there to be there when needed.